At 68, my husband filed for divorce. I agreed to give him the house, the car, and all our savings. My lawyer screamed that I'd lost my mind, but I calmly signed all the papers. He didn't know that 3 days before, Good day, dear listeners. It's Larissa again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. For 43 years, I believed I knew my husband. Robert and I built our life together brick by brick. A modest house in Pennsylvania, 2 children we raised with love, a retirement we'd carefully planned. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. I thought we were happy. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning in March. Robert left his phone on the kitchen counter while he showered. It buzzed. I glanced at it, not snooping, just a reflex. The message preview made my blood run cold. Can't wait for our weekend away. Love you, baby. From someone named Tiff. My hands trembled as I set the phone down exactly where he'd left it. When Robert came downstairs, toweling his hair, I watched him check his messages. He smiled. A secret, satisfied smile I'd never seen before. That smile haunted me for days. I told myself it was nothing, a mistake, maybe a friend's joke. But the signs multiplied. Robert started going to the gym at 68, suddenly concerned about his physique. He bought new cologne. He took calls in the garage, closing the door behind him. When I asked about his day, his answers became vague, distracted. 3 weeks later, I found a receipt in his jacket pocket, a jewelry store, a diamond pendant, $3,000. I'd received no gift. Our anniversary had passed months ago. Who was this pendant for? That night I couldn't sleep. I lay beside my husband of 4 decades, listening to him breathe, wondering who this stranger in my bed really was. How long had this been going on? How blind had I been? The next morning, while Robert was out, another mysterious errand, I did something I'd never done before. I went through his office. My heart pounded as I opened desk drawers, feeling like a criminal in my own home. Was I violating his privacy? Maybe. But something told me I needed to know the truth. In the bottom drawer, beneath old tax returns, I found a folder. Inside were printouts of emails, dozens of them, all to Tiffany Morrison, age 35. The emails went back 2 years. 2 years of I love you and I can't wait to start our life together and soon we'll be free. My vision blurred. My chest tightened. 2 years. While I cooked his meals, washed his clothes, sat beside him watching television every evening, he'd been planning a future with someone young enough to be our daughter. But the worst was yet to come. Beneath the emails, I found documents, legal documents, transfer deeds. Robert had been quietly moving assets. The vacation cabin we'd bought together 20 years ago, transferred to a trust with Tiffany as beneficiary. His investment account, the one I thought was for our retirement. He'd added her name. I photographed everything with shaking hands. Then I carefully returned each document to its exact position. When Robert came home, I greeted him with a smile. "How was your day, honey?" "Fine," he said, barely looking at me. "Just errands." Over the next week, I watched him with new eyes. Every kindness felt like a lie. Every "I love you" tasted like ash. How could I have been so stupid, so trusting? Then came the day that changed everything. Robert sat me down at the kitchen table, his face serious. "Margaret, we need to talk." My stomach dropped, but I kept my expression neutral. "About what?" "I'm not happy," he said, the words clearly rehearsed. "I haven't been for a long time. I think we should divorce." There it was, the moment he'd been building toward for 2 years. I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt something cold and hard crystallize in my chest. "All right," I said calmly, "if that's what you want." He blinked, surprised by my lack of resistance. "I'll be fair about everything," he said quickly. "You can have the house, the car, our savings. I just want my freedom. I nodded slowly, pretending to consider. That's very generous, Robert. But I wasn't thinking about his generosity. I was thinking about those transfer deeds, about the assets he'd already hidden, about the vacation cabin and the investment account. He was offering me what he'd already planned to take away. My lawyer, David Chen, would later scream at me that I'd lost my mind. But 3 days before I signed those divorce papers, I'd already made my move. 3 days before, I'd done something Robert would never see coming. And I smiled. After Robert left the house that evening, another business dinner, he claimed, I sat at our kitchen table and made a list. Not an emotional list, a practical one. What I was losing, our home, valued at $400,000. Robert's pension, which I was entitled to half of. His Social Security benefits. The joint savings account with $60,000. Our shared investment portfolio, worth nearly $200,000. The vacation cabin on Lake Erie. 43 years of marriage reduced to numbers on a page. What he was hiding, the cabin already transferred. An investment account with Tiffany's name added. Who knew what else? My hands shook as I wrote. The numbers blurred. At 68 years old, I was supposed to be enjoying retirement, not rebuilding my entire life. Fear gripped me, real, suffocating fear. How would I survive? Where would I live? Could I even afford a lawyer? I allowed myself 1 hour to cry. 1 hour to feel the betrayal, the humiliation, the terror. I locked myself in the bathroom, turned on the shower to mask the sound, and sobbed until my throat was raw. Then I washed my face, looked at myself in the mirror, and made a decision. I would not be a victim, not anymore. The next morning, I called my sister Eleanor in Ohio. I need your help, I told her, and I explained everything. Eleanor had always been the practical one, the fighter in our family. That son of a bitch, Eleanor breathed. What do you need? Information. I need to know exactly what we own, everything, and I need to move fast. Eleanor worked in real estate. She understood property, assets, how to find hidden transfers. Give me 2 days, she said. I'll find out what he's been doing. While Eleanor investigated, I made my second call. To David Chen, the lawyer who'd handled our will years ago. I scheduled a consultation under my maiden name, claiming I needed advice for a friend. I couldn't risk Robert finding out. David's office smelled like old books and coffee. He listened to my story, well, my friend's story, with a deepening frown. Your friend needs to secure her assets immediately, he said bluntly, before the divorce filing becomes official. Once papers are filed, the court can freeze everything. What can she do? I asked, my voice steady despite my racing heart. She needs documentation. Bank statements, property deeds, evidence of any assets he's hidden or transferred. If she can prove he's been moving assets in anticipation of divorce, the court will look very unfavorably on him. He could be forced to return everything and then some. I absorbed this information like a sponge. And if she has that documentation, then she has leverage, real leverage. David leaned forward. But she needs to act now, not next week, now. I left his office with a plan forming. That evening, while Robert watched television, I told him I was going to visit Eleanor. She's been feeling lonely, I said. I'll stay a few days. Robert barely looked up from the screen. Sure, whatever. Did he even care? Or was he relieved to have me gone, free to see Tiffany without sneaking around? I packed a small bag, but I wasn't going to Eleanor's. Not yet. First, I had a stop to make. Our bank was open until 6. I arrived at 5:30, my heart hammering. I'd never been good with finances. Robert had always handled our money. But I'd spent the last 2 days studying our accounts online, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. I'd like to open a new account, I told the banker. a young woman named Jessica. Just in my name. She smiled professionally. Of course, Mrs. Harrison. What type of account? Checking and savings. I'll be transferring funds from our joint account. Jessica's smile faltered slightly. How much will you be transferring? Half, I said firmly. $30,000. It was my legal right. The money was jointly owned. But my hands still shook as I signed the paperwork. This was real. I was really doing this. The transfer will be complete by tomorrow morning, Jessica said. I walked out of the bank feeling like I'd just committed a crime. But I hadn't. I'd simply taken what was legally mine before Robert could hide it like he'd hidden everything else. That night, at Eleanor's house, I received her report. She'd found 3 separate transfers: the cabin, an investment account, and, this made my blood boil, a life insurance policy he'd taken out 5 years ago with Tiffany as the beneficiary. He's been planning this for years, Eleanor said quietly. This wasn't sudden, Margaret. This was calculated. I stared at the document spread across her kitchen table. Evidence? Proof? Ammunition? Good, I said, surprising myself with the coldness in my voice. Then I know exactly what I'm fighting. The next morning, I walked into David Chen's office with a folder full of evidence. This time, I wasn't asking for advice for a friend. I need you to represent me in my divorce, I said, placing the folder on his desk. And I need you to do it before my husband files. David opened the folder. His eyebrows climbed higher with each document. The transfer deeds, the investment account statements with Tiffany's name, the life insurance policy. Eleanor's findings on the hidden assets. Mrs. Harrison, he said slowly, do you understand what you have here? Evidence of asset concealment? More than that. This is fraud, marital fraud. Your husband has been systematically moving assets in preparation for divorce, which is illegal in Pennsylvania. If we file first and present this evidence, we can freeze all his assets. He won't be able to touch anything without court permission. My heart raced. How quickly can we move? I can file by end of day tomorrow. But Mrs. Harrison, once we do this, there's no going back. Your husband will know you've been investigating him. He'll be angry. Good, I said. Let him be angry. We spent the next 4 hours going through everything. David asked questions I'd never considered. How long had I known about the affair? Had Robert shown any signs of financial abuse? Had he prevented me from accessing accounts? The answer to that last question gave me pause. No, he hadn't prevented access, but he'd discouraged it. You don't need to worry about that stuff, he'd always said. I've got it handled. And like a fool, I'd believed him. By late afternoon, David had drafted the divorce petition. I read it carefully. We were asking for immediate freezing of all assets, a full forensic audit of Robert's finances, and half of everything, including the hidden assets. He's going to fight this, David warned. It won't be pleasant. I don't need pleasant, I said. I need justice. I signed the papers with a steady hand. David would file them in court the next morning. Then the sheriff would serve Robert with the papers at our home. But Robert figured out something was wrong before the papers ever arrived. That night I returned home after dark. I'd told Robert I was staying another day with Eleanor, but I needed to retrieve some personal documents. I used my key quietly, hoping he wouldn't hear me. The house was dark except for the light in Robert's office. I heard his voice, low and urgent. Don't know what she knows, but she took money from the account. $30,000. She's never done anything like that before. I froze in the hallway. No, Tiff. I don't think she suspects about us. She's just being paranoid about the divorce. What? No, I haven't transferred the house yet. The lawyer said we needed to wait until after. Because if it looks like I'm hiding assets, the judge will... So they knew. They knew I'd taken the money, and they were worried. I'll handle Margaret, Robert said, his voice harder now. She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. She always does. Trust me. Something cold and sharp settled in my chest. He thought I was weak, compliant, easy to manipulate. I backed out of the house silently and drove to a hotel. That night, I barely slept. Tomorrow, Robert would be served. Tomorrow, he'd know I wasn't the woman he thought I was. The call came at 10:30 the next morning. Robert. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. Finally, he left a message. Margaret, what the hell have you done? The sheriff just showed up with divorce papers. Divorce papers! You're suing me? You're accusing me of hiding assets? Have you lost your goddamn mind? Call me back? Now. I deleted the message and called David. He's been served, David confirmed. And Mrs. Harrison, he's already called his own lawyer. This is going to get contentious? I expected that. There's something else. We've received a counterfiling. He's claiming you've stolen marital assets by taking that $30,000. He wants it returned immediately and wants you held in contempt. I laughed. Actually laughed. He's accusing me of stealing? It's a pressure tactic. He wants you scared. Does it work? I thought about that message, about his anger, about his assumption that I'd just comply. No, I said. It doesn't work at all. That afternoon, Eleanor forwarded me something that changed everything. She'd been digging deeper into Tiffany Morrison. Tiffany wasn't just Robert's mistress. She'd done this before. Twice. 2 previous relationships with married men, both ending in divorces, both leaving her significantly wealthier. Margaret, Eleanor said on the phone, I think she targeted him. This wasn't romance. This was a con. I stared at the evidence. Court records, financial statements, a pattern of behavior. This wasn't just betrayal. This was predatory. And now I had proof. With Eleanor's findings in hand, I went back to David. We amended our divorce petition to include evidence of Tiffany's pattern of targeting wealthy married men. We subpoenaed her financial records, and we filed a motion to depose both her and Robert under oath. You're going for the throat, David observed. I'm going for the truth, I corrected. But I underestimated how desperate they'd become. It started with phone calls. Robert called 30 times in one day. When I didn't answer, he started showing up. At Eleanor's house, at the grocery store, at my doctor's office. Always the same message. We need to talk. Stop this insanity. I refused to engage. David had instructed me clearly, no communication except through lawyers. Then Tiffany got involved. She showed up at Eleanor's door on a Thursday evening. I watched through the window as she rang the bell, young, beautiful, perfectly styled. Everything I wasn't anymore, Eleanor answered. Can I help you? I need to speak to Margaret Harrison, Tiffany said, her voice sweet as poison. It's urgent. She's not interested in speaking with you. Please. Tiffany's eyes welled with tears. Practiced, perfect tears. I just want to explain. She's ruining Robert's life. Our lives. Over a misunderstanding. I opened the door. I couldn't help myself. A misunderstanding, I said, my voice ice cold. Is that what we're calling a 2-year affair and systematic asset theft? Tiffany's tears vanished. Her expression hardened. Robert loves me. He's been miserable with you for years. You're just too blind and pathetic to see it. Get off my sister's property, Eleanor said sharply. But Tiffany wasn't finished. You think you'll win? You think a judge will side with a bitter old woman over a man who just wants happiness? You're going to end up with nothing. Nothing. And everyone will know you're the vindictive bitch who destroyed a good man. We have evidence, I said quietly, of everything. The hidden assets, the affair, your history of targeting married men. How do you think that will look in court? Her face went pale. You're bluffing. Try me. She left, but the threats escalated. The next day, Robert's lawyer sent a letter threatening to sue me for defamation, claiming I'd damaged his reputation by spreading false allegations about Ms. Morrison. They demanded I drop the divorce petition and agree to Robert's original terms or face legal consequences. David laughed when he read it. They're panicking. This is good. But I didn't feel good. I felt scared. That night, someone slashed my tires while my car was parked at Eleanor's. No proof it was them, but the timing was suspicious. Then Robert went nuclear. He filed an emergency motion claiming I was mentally unstable and requesting a psychiatric evaluation. His affidavit claimed I'd been acting erratically, making paranoid accusations, stealing money. He submitted statements from friends, his friends, all saying they'd noticed me becoming confused and irrational. They're trying to paint me as senile, I told David, my voice shaking. It won't work. We have documentation proving everything you've alleged. But Margaret, I need to ask, are you okay? This kind of pressure, it's intense. If you need time— No, I interrupted. No time. We keep pushing. The deposition was scheduled for the following week. Robert and Tiffany would have to answer questions under oath. David prepared me for hours, running through possible questions, teaching me to stay calm, to stick to facts. They'll try to rattle you, he warned. Don't let them. The weekend before the deposition, Robert showed up at Eleanor's house again, this time with Tiffany. They sat in their car outside, watching the house. When I looked out the window, Robert stared back with such hatred, I hardly recognized him. Eleanor called the police. They came, talked to Robert, told him to leave. He did, but not before shouting through the car window. You're making a huge mistake, Margaret. You could still fix this. Don't make me destroy you. That night, I couldn't stop shaking. Eleanor made tea and sat with me. You don't have to keep fighting, she said gently. If this is too much— It is too much, I admitted. I'm terrified, but I'm not stopping. The next morning, I woke to an email from David. The forensic accountant had completed his preliminary report. Robert had hidden over $300,000 in assets. $300,000, money that should have been ours, transferred to accounts with Tiffany's name or held in offshore trusts. We have them, David wrote. They're finished. I took the next 3 days off from everything. No lawyers, no documents, no planning. Eleanor and I drove to the lake house, the one property Robert hadn't managed to steal yet. We sat by the water. I breathed. I slept. I let myself feel something other than rage and fear. On the third day, I felt ready to finish this. They tried a different approach on Monday. Robert's lawyer called David with an offer. My client is willing to settle. Mrs. Harrison keeps the house, the car, and half the visible savings. No prolonged court battle. No depositions. Clean and simple. And the hidden assets, David asked. A pause. What hidden assets? The $300,000 your client transferred. The cabin. The investment accounts with Ms. Morrison's name. Another pause, longer this time. My client denies any hidden assets, but in the spirit of compromise, he's willing to offer an additional $50,000. David laughed. Tell your client we'll see him in court. That evening, Tiffany tried her hand. She called me directly. Somehow she'd gotten my new cell number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Margaret, she said, her voice soft, almost kind. Please, just listen. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But Robert and I, we really do love each other. I said nothing. I never meant to hurt you, she continued. I know that sounds hollow, but it's true. Sometimes people just connect. It's nobody's fault. It just happens. You added your name to his accounts, I said flatly. That doesn't just happen. Robert wanted to take care of me. Is that so wrong? You had him for 43 years. Can't you let him have some happiness now? The audacity was breathtaking. You're a con artist, I said calmly. You've done this before, twice. I have the court records. Silence. You target older, wealthy men, I continued. You seduce them, convince them to transfer assets, then move on after the divorce settles. I know your pattern, Tiffany, and soon everyone else will too. You can't prove. I can prove all of it. So here's what's going to happen. You and Robert are going to give back every cent you stole, and then you're going to disappear. Because if you don't, I'll make sure your little scheme becomes very public. How many more wealthy men will want you after that? I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from power. They left me alone after that. Days passed with no calls, no threats, no visits. David said their lawyer had gone quiet too. They're regrouping, he warned. Don't let your guard down. But I wasn't letting my guard down. I was building my support system. First, I called my daughter, Jennifer, in California. I'd avoided telling her, not wanting to burden her. But I needed her to know. She listened to the whole story, her shock palpable even through the phone. Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner? I could have helped. I needed to handle it myself first, I said. But I need you now. I'm booking a flight. I'll be there this weekend. My son Michael was harder. He'd always been close to his father. When I told him, he went silent for a long moment. Dad's having an affair? For 2 years, and he's been hiding money. That doesn't sound like Dad. I have proof, Michael. Documents, financial records. Another silence. I need time to process this. I understand. But Michael, he's not who you think he is. Jennifer arrived on Friday. The moment I saw her, I broke down. She held me while I cried. Really cried, not the controlled tears I'd allowed myself before. You're the strongest woman I know, she whispered. And you're going to win this. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went to church. Not for religion, I'd never been particularly devout. But for community. For the women who'd known me for 20 years, who'd seen me raise my children, who'd celebrated birthdays and holidays with us, I told them everything. Sitting in the church basement over coffee and cookies, I laid it all out. The affair, the hidden money, the threats. They listened in stunned silence. Then Dorothy, who'd been married for 52 years, reached across the table and took my hand. That bastard, she said, and Dorothy never cursed. What do you need? Witnesses, I said. If this goes to trial, I need character witnesses. People who can testify to the kind of person I am, the kind of person Robert is. You have us, Dorothy said firmly. The other women nodded. All of us, added Patricia. Whatever you need. I left that church basement feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Supported. Not alone. That night, Jennifer and I sat up late talking. Do you regret marrying him? She asked. I considered the question carefully. I regret the last 2 years, but not all 43. We had good times. We made you and Michael. I wish I'd seen this coming. How could you have? Jennifer said. He's a liar. Good liars are hard to spot. Michael called the next morning. I talked to Dad, he said. His voice was cold. He denied everything. Said you were having some kind of breakdown. My heart sank. Michael, I asked him about Tiffany Morrison. He said she was just a friend, so I looked her up. Mom, her LinkedIn profile says she's his business partner. She's not his business partner. I know, because Dad's never had a business. So I dug deeper. I found the property transfer for the cabin, his name and hers. Michael's voice cracked. He lied to me, right to my face. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Don't be sorry. Be ready to destroy him in court, because I'll testify if you need me to. I closed my eyes, relief washing over me. My children stood with me. My friends stood with me. I wasn't alone in this fight. And that changed everything. They came on a Tuesday afternoon, both of them. Robert and Tiffany, standing on Eleanor's doorstep with apologetic expressions and a bouquet of flowers. "Margaret," Robert said through the screen door, "please, can we talk? No lawyers, just us, like civilized people." Every instinct screamed at me to slam the door. But I was curious. What game were they playing now? "5 minutes," I said, opening the door. "Eleanor stays with me." We sat in the living room, them on one couch, Eleanor and me on the other. Robert placed the flowers on the coffee table. White roses, my favorites, or they used to be. "Margaret, I've been doing a lot of thinking," Robert began, his voice gentle, almost tender. "This has gotten out of hand. We're destroying each other. It doesn't have to be this way." Tiffany nodded, her hand resting on Robert's arm. Possessive. "We never wanted to hurt you," she said softly. "We just want everyone to be happy." I watched them carefully. Robert's concerned expression. Tiffany's gentle tone. It was a performance. But for whose benefit? "What exactly do you want?" I asked. "I want to make this right," Robert said. "I was angry before. I said things I didn't mean. But you're still my wife, the mother of my children. You deserve respect." "Respect," I repeated. The word tasted bitter. "What if we split everything 50-50?" Robert continued. "Truly 50-50. The house, the savings, my pension, fair and equitable. You'd be comfortable, secure. Isn't that what you want?" It was a good offer, better than what he'd originally proposed. If I didn't know about the hidden assets, I might have been tempted. "And the cabin?" I asked. "The investment account with Tiffany's name on it?" Robert's mask slipped for just a second. "Those are separate assets, pre-divorce arrangements. That you hid from me." "I didn't hide anything. I just made some financial decisions." "Fraudulent financial decisions," Eleanor interjected. "Margaret's lawyer has documentation." Tiffany leaned forward, her eyes wide and earnest. "Margaret, I understand you're angry with me, but I'm not your enemy. I'm not trying to take anything from you. Robert and we just want to start fresh. Can't you understand that? Haven't you ever felt a connection with someone that was just undeniable?" The manipulation was masterful. Appeal to emotion. Make herself relatable. Paint me as the bitter obstacle to true love. "You're 35 years old," I said. "You've done this twice before. 2 other married men, 2 other divorces. Both women ended up with less than they were entitled to, while you walked away with substantial assets. Did you feel an undeniable connection with them too?" Tiffany's face went blank, then hardened. "That's different," she said coldly. "Those were cons," I finished, "just like this one." Robert stood up abruptly. "Enough. We came here to offer you a fair settlement, a generous settlement. But if you're going to throw accusations—" "Sit down, Robert," I said quietly. Something in my tone made him pause. I stood up, facing them both. "I know everything," I said. "Every transfer, every hidden account, every lie you told. I have forensic accountants going through 43 years of finances. I have evidence of Tiffany's pattern of predatory behavior. I have character witnesses ready to testify. And in 2 weeks, you'll both be deposed under oath. So here's my offer. Give back every cent you stole, every property you transferred, every dollar you hid, and maybe, I won't pursue criminal fraud charges." Robert's face turned purple. "You're threatening me? In my own marriage, I can't make financial decisions without your permission. Not when those decisions involve hiding assets and transferring them to your mistress 3 days before filing for divorce. That's called fraud, Robert. And yes, it's criminal." Tiffany jumped up, her gentle mask completely gone. "You're a vindictive old bitch who can't accept that she's been replaced. You're pathetic." "I'm thorough," I corrected. "There's a difference." Robert moved toward me, not threatening, but intimidating. He was taller, bigger. For 43 years, that had never mattered. Now it felt intentional. "You're making a huge mistake," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You think you can humiliate me? Destroy my reputation? I will bury you, Margaret. I will take everything, the house, the money. I'll make sure you spend your final years in poverty. And everyone will know you're a crazy, bitter woman who drove your husband away." Eleanor stood up, phone in hand. "That sounds like a threat, Robert." "Should I call the police?" He backed off, but his eyes never left mine. "This isn't over," he said. "You're right," I agreed. "It's not. See you at the deposition." They left, slamming the door. Through the window, I watched them argue in their car, Robert gesturing angrily, Tiffany crying. Eleanor touched my arm. "Are you okay?" I was shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline, from the realization of what I'd just done. I'd stood up to them, I'd called their bluff, and they'd shown their true faces. "I'm better than okay," I said. "I'm ready." The deposition took place in a conference room downtown. Robert sat on one side of the long table with his lawyer. I sat on the other, with David. A court reporter recorded every word. Tiffany would be deposed separately, afterward. Robert looked confident. He wore his best suit, the navy one I'd bought him for our anniversary 3 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. David began methodically. "Mr. Harrison, how long have you known Tiffany Morrison?" "About 2.5 years. We met through mutual friends." "And what is the nature of your relationship with Ms. Morrison?" Robert's lawyer leaned in. "You don't have to answer that." "I'll answer," Robert said smoothly. "We're friends. Close friends." "Have you ever been romantically involved with Ms. Morrison?" "That's a personal question and irrelevant to these proceedings." David slid a document across the table. "These are text messages between you and Ms. Morrison. Would you say these are messages between friends?" Robert glanced at the messages, the ones I'd photographed from his phone months ago. His jaw tightened. "I don't recall sending these. They're from your phone number to her number. Shall I read some aloud? Can't wait to start our life together. Soon we'll be free. I love you more than anything. I may have. We may have had a brief romantic connection. But it ended." "When did it end?" "Several months ago." David slid another document forward. "This is a text from you to Ms. Morrison dated 3 days ago. Don't worry, baby. We'll get through this and start our real life. If the relationship ended months ago, why are you still calling her baby and planning a future together?" Robert's composure cracked. "Those messages are out of context. Let's talk about context then. Did you transfer the deed to your Lake Erie cabin to a trust naming Ms. Morrison as beneficiary? That was a legitimate estate planning decision. Made 2 years into your affair and without your wife's knowledge or consent? It's my property. I can do what I want with it. Actually, under Pennsylvania law, it's marital property. You purchased it during the marriage. Did you inform Mrs. Harrison of this transfer?" Silence. "Mr. Harrison? No. Did you add Ms. Morrison's name to an investment account containing approximately $80,000? Yes, as a financial planning measure. What kind of financial planning requires adding your mistress to an account behind your wife's back? She's not my." Robert caught himself. It was a legitimate decision. David pulled out the forensic accountant's report. Page by page, he walked Robert through every hidden transfer, every concealed asset, every lie. With each revelation, Robert's story changed. First he denied. Then he claimed it was legitimate. Then he blamed me for not paying attention to our finances. "So it's Mrs. Harrison's fault you hid $300,000? I didn't hide anything. I made investments." "Investments in your mistress's name?" Robert's lawyer called for a break. During the 15 minutes, I watched Robert pace in the hallway through the glass door. He was panicking. The confident mask was gone. When we resumed, David showed the evidence Eleanor had found. Tiffany's history. The 2 previous relationships. The pattern. Were you aware that Ms. Morrison has been involved with 2 other married men in the past 5 years? Both relationships ended in divorce. Both men lost significant assets to Ms. Morrison. Robert went pale. That's not relevant. Did you know about this pattern? No. So you were unaware that the woman you planned to spend your life with has a documented history of targeting and financially exploiting married men? Robert looked sick, genuinely sick. She told me those men were abusive. She had to protect herself financially. Did she tell you she received over $200,000 from the first divorce and $350,000 from the second? Robert's hands were shaking. That can't be true. It's public record, Mr. Harrison. Court filings. We have documentation. I watched my husband of 43 years realize he'd been played. The woman he'd betrayed me for, sacrificed his marriage for, wasn't who he thought she was. The devastation on his face was almost satisfying. Almost. When it was Tiffany's turn, she tried to be charming, flirtatious even with David. It didn't work. Ms. Morrison, how did you meet Robert Harrison? At a charity event. Which charity? She hesitated. I don't recall the specific organization. Interesting, because Mr. Harrison said you met through mutual friends. Were these friends at the charity event? Her story unraveled quickly. She contradicted herself. She claimed not to remember dates, amounts, conversations. When David presented evidence of her previous relationships, she called them private matters and character assassination. Did you intentionally pursue Mr. Harrison knowing he was married and financially stable? No, we fell in love. You fell in love with a man 43 years older than you? Age doesn't matter when... Is it a coincidence that both your previous relationships were also with significantly older, married, wealthy men? Those were different. How? She couldn't answer. She just stared at David with hatred in her eyes. When it was over, David leaned back in his chair. We have everything we need, he said quietly. They're done. The settlement hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Robert's lawyer had requested it, a desperate attempt to avoid a public trial. David warned me they'd try one last manipulation. He was right. They offered me 60% of everything, the house, the savings, Robert's pension. It was more than I'd get from a 50-50 split. It's a good offer, David said carefully, but it's up to you. I looked at the settlement papers. Generous on the surface, but they still kept the hidden assets. The cabin, the offshore accounts, everything they'd stolen. No, I said. Margaret, no compromises. I want everything they took, all of it, and I want it public. David smiled grimly. Then we go to trial. The trial lasted 2 days. The courtroom was small, but it felt enormous. Jennifer and Michael sat behind me. Eleanor, my church friends, all there to support me. Robert and Tiffany sat together on the other side. For the first time, Robert looked old, tired, defeated. David presented our evidence methodically. The hidden transfers. The affair documented in hundreds of texts and emails. The forensic accountant's testimony about the concealed assets. Eleanor's research on Tiffany's pattern of behavior. Then came the character witnesses. Dorothy testified about how Robert had slowly isolated me from friends. Patricia talked about how he'd discouraged me from having my own bank account. Michael testified, and this broke my heart, about how his father had lied to him repeatedly about Tiffany. Robert's lawyer tried to discredit it all. He painted me as vindictive. Robert as a man seeking happiness after a stale marriage. He argued that estate planning wasn't fraud, that Robert had every right to make financial decisions. But then David called Tiffany to the stand. Under oath, cornered by evidence, she crumbled. Yes, she'd known Robert was married. Yes, she'd encouraged him to transfer assets. No, she hadn't disclosed her previous relationships. Yes, She'd benefited financially from those relationships. Did you love Robert Harrison? David asked. She hesitated too long. Yes. Or did you love his net worth? Objection! Robert's lawyer shouted. I'll rephrase. Did you ever research Mr. Harrison's financial status before beginning a relationship with him? Another hesitation. I may have looked into his background. You ran a credit check on him, didn't you? Before your first date? Her face went white. I wanted to make sure he was stable. You wanted to make sure he was worth your time. She didn't answer. When Robert took the stand, he was broken. He admitted the affair, admitted hiding assets, but he claimed he'd done it for love, for a fresh start. Did you know Ms. Morrison had a pattern of pursuing married, wealthy men? David asked. I learned that recently. How did that make you feel? Robert looked at Tiffany. She stared back, her expression cold. Used, he said quietly. I felt used. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Patricia Monroe, listened to everything with an impassive expression. After closing arguments, she took a 30-minute recess. When she returned, her verdict was swift and brutal. Mr. Harrison, she began, you have engaged in systematic fraud against your wife. You concealed assets, transferred property, and planned a divorce while secretly enriching a third party. This is not simply infidelity. This is financial abuse. Robert slumped in his chair. I am ordering the immediate return of all transferred assets to the marital estate. The cabin on Lake Erie, the investment accounts, the offshore trusts, all of it. Furthermore, I am awarding Mrs. Harrison 65% of all marital assets as a penalty for your fraudulent behavior. This includes your pension. Robert's lawyer stood. Your Honor, I'm not finished. I am also ordering Mr. Harrison to pay all of Mrs. Harrison's legal fees, which currently total $48,000. And I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for possible criminal prosecution for fraud. The courtroom was silent. As for Ms. Morrison, the judge continued, looking at Tiffany with barely concealed disgust, while you are not a party to this divorce, your pattern of behavior is deeply troubling. I am forwarding my findings to the State Attorney General's office for investigation into possible fraud and elder abuse. Tiffany went pale. This court finds in favor of Margaret Harrison. Mr. Harrison, you have 30 days to transfer all assets as ordered. Failure to comply will result in contempt charges and possible jail time. We're adjourned. The gavel came down. I sat very still, letting it sink in. I'd won, not just won, I'd destroyed them. Robert stood shakily. Tiffany grabbed his arm, but he shook her off. Don't touch me, he said. Don't ever touch me again. She tried to follow him out, but he walked faster, leaving her alone in the courtroom. Jennifer hugged me from behind. You did it, Mom. I had. I'd fought back. I'd won. And it felt incredible. 6 months later, I stood in my new kitchen, sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked a garden I'd planted myself. The house was smaller than the one I'd shared with Robert, a cozy 2-bedroom cottage 20 minutes from Jennifer. But it was mine. Truly mine. With my settlement, I'd bought the house outright. No mortgage, no debt. I'd put the rest in a trust that would provide steady income for the rest of my life. David had recommended an excellent financial advisor, a woman my age who actually explained things instead of patronizing me. For the first time in 43 years, I controlled my own money. And it was liberating. Jennifer visited every Sunday. We'd cook together, talk, laugh. Michael came less often. He lived across the country. But we spoke on the phone weekly. Both my children had apologized for not seeing Robert's true nature sooner. We thought you had the perfect marriage, Michael had said. So did I'd replied. But perfect is just another word for hidden. I'd learned to live alone and discovered I liked it. I woke when I wanted, ate what I wanted, watched what I wanted. I joined a book club, women my age who were smart, funny, and refreshingly honest about their own marriages. I started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping women who were escaping abusive relationships. Many were younger than me, but the pattern was the same: financial control, isolation, manipulation. I could spot the signs now. I'd lived them. "You're making a real difference," the shelter director told me. "These women need to see someone who got out, who rebuilt." Some days were hard. Some nights I felt the loneliness creep in, but mostly I felt free, lighter, like I'd been carrying a weight for decades and finally set it down. I'd even started dating. Nothing serious, just coffee with a retired teacher named Frank who made me laugh. It felt strange at first, like cheating. Then I reminded myself I wasn't married anymore. I could do whatever I wanted. Meanwhile, Robert's life had imploded spectacularly. The district attorney had indeed prosecuted him for fraud. He'd pleaded guilty to avoid jail time, receiving 5 years probation and a $10,000 fine. The guilty plea meant he lost his pension completely. After giving me 65% of assets and paying legal fees, he was left with almost nothing. He'd moved into a small apartment in a bad part of town. Michael said it was depressing: peeling wallpaper, broken air conditioning, neighbors who fought at all hours. "He looks old, Mom," Michael had said sadly. "Really old." I felt a pang of something, not quite sympathy, but acknowledgement. 43 years of marriage don't disappear because of betrayal. I didn't love him anymore, but I remembered loving him. That had to count for something. But my sympathy had limits. Tiffany's fate was even worse. The Attorney General's investigation had uncovered evidence of elder fraud, a crime in Pennsylvania. She'd been indicted on 3 counts related to her previous relationships. The trial made news. Local papers ran stories. Woman accused of targeting elderly men. Her face was everywhere, her pattern exposed. One of her previous victims testified about how she'd manipulated him, isolated him from his family, convinced him to transfer assets. She was convicted on 2 counts, sentenced to 18 months in prison, and ordered to pay restitution to her victims. Robert had tried to defend her at first, claiming the prosecution was vindictive, but even he couldn't deny the evidence. She'd used him just like she'd used the others. The love he'd destroyed his marriage for was just another con. Eleanor told me Robert had tried to contact Tiffany in prison. She'd refused his calls. "He's alone now," Eleanor said. "Completely alone." "He made his choices," I replied. "Robert tried to contact me once about 3 months after the trial. A letter, handwritten, rambling. He apologized. He said he'd been a fool, that he missed me, that he wished he could undo everything. I read it once, then burned it in my fireplace. Some things couldn't be undone. I'd also heard through mutual friends that Robert had developed health problems. Stress-related, they said. High blood pressure, heart palpitations. He'd aged a decade in 6 months. "Do you feel bad for him?" Dorothy asked me once. I considered the question honestly. I feel bad that it came to this, but I don't regret fighting back. He tried to leave me with nothing. He betrayed me in every possible way. I just made sure he faced consequences. "Good," Dorothy said firmly. "He deserved consequences." On a sunny afternoon in October, I planted roses in my garden. White roses. They were still my favorite. As I worked the soil, I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago. Terrified, betrayed, lost. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who knew her worth, someone who'd fought for herself and won. I stood back and looked at my garden, at my house, at the life I'd built from ruins, and I smiled. I learned something through all of this. It's never too late to fight for yourself. At 68, I thought my life was settled, my story written. I was wrong. My real story was just beginning. If you're in my situation, if someone is betraying you, stealing from you, lying to you, don't accept it. Document everything. Get professional help. Fight back. You deserve better than crumbs from your own life. What would you have done in my place? Would you have given up, or would you have fought? Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there find their strength.